Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something, well, kind of different. Usually, we're parsing through dense research, right? Massive data sets or these really lengthy historical records. But today, our source material has been distilled down to the absolute bare minimum. We're looking at what we're calling the isolated artifact. We're going to explore how words operate in a total vacuum and how meaning is generated not just by what's written, but by the massive, deafening silence of what's left out. So get ready, because we are doing a deep dive into the sheer power of a phrase when you strip away literally all of its surrounding context. We're jumping straight into a textual deconstruction.
All right, let's dive right into this. These two words represent the absolute entirety of our source material today. Zodiac killer. That's the whole shebang, a solitary, chilling artifact of text. You know, in a world that is just overflowing with information 24/7, there's a really profound weight to dealing with just two isolated words. We are so incredibly used to having context handed to us, dates, places, narratives, long explanations, that when we're confronted with nothing but a moniker, it basically forces our brains to hyperfocus. This phrase doesn't just quietly sit there, it demands your attention. By isolating these two words, they become an artifact, kind of like finding a single mysterious shard of pottery out in the middle of a desert. We have to examine its edges, its texture, and that intense cultural gravity it holds all on its own.
Now, what's really fascinating is what happens when we split this source text right down the middle into its two core components. We uncover this incredibly stark, honestly disturbing juxtaposition. Think about it. These two words do not naturally belong together, like at all. They come from entirely different registers of the human experience. When you read them together, sure, they form a cohesive, incredibly dark title. But when you pull them apart and place them directly across from one another, you create friction. We're forcing our brains to pause and process them independently before they inevitably crash back together in our minds. So let's look a little closer at what makes these two halves so radically different.
Let's start with the literal dictionary definition of that first word. Zodiac is defined as a belt of the heavens divided into 12 equal astrological signs. When you really stop to think about that definition, it injects this eerie, almost celestial mysticism into the phrase. I mean, the zodiac is ancient, it's cosmic. It represents the stars, fate, destiny, the grand, slow turning of the universe itself. It's a word that is just absolutely steeped in wonder and mythology. For thousands of years, humanity has looked up at the zodiac to find meaning, to navigate vast oceans, to try and predict the future. It's a concept infinitely larger than any single human life. By isolating this word, we see the grand, almost theatrical scale that the first half of our artifact commands. It's literally claiming the stars themselves.
And that brilliantly sets up the absolute shock of the second word. A killer is defined so simply, so bluntly, as a person or thing that causes death. This violently strips away all that sweeping celestial astrology we just talked about and replaces it with a brutal, definitive human reality. Where zodiac is vast and cosmic, killer is visceral, immediate, and permanent. It grounds the entire phrase in mortality. And honestly, the true brilliance of our source artifact lies right here in this collision. The noun killer completely subverts the adjective zodiac. It takes the stars and violently drags them down into the dirt. It takes this ancient system of divination and staples it to the most ultimate, irreversible human act imaginable. The emotional whiplash of this artifact doesn't just come from the second word itself. It comes from that jarring, high-speed drop from the heavenly belt straight to the abrupt end of life.
So, the crucial point we need to make here is not just about the text itself, but the heavy, suffocating weight of everything that is missing from it. We're dealing with a massive void of information. Notice how there are no dates provided. That intentionally strips the subject of time. It makes the phrase feel eternal, completely untethered to any specific year or era. There are no locations listed either. It doesn't belong to a city, a state, or a country. It just exists in the abstract. And perhaps most chillingly, there are 0 victims mentioned. The human cost is entirely erased from the text, leaving absolutely nothing but the chosen identity. This right here is the raw power of negative space. You know how in art, the empty space around a subject is often just as important as the subject itself? Same thing here. The absolute absence of data creates a vacuum, and, well, human nature abhors a vacuum. Because the text gives us 0 facts, our imaginations are forced to step in and fill in those terrifying blanks.
Confronted with this absolute void of historical exposition, we really have to ask ourselves, what actually happens when you strip away the history and are left with nothing but a title? This is the core of our deconstruction today. When you remove all those encyclopedic details, the timelines, the police investigations, the physical evidence, you are left with pure mythology. A moniker standing entirely on its own transcends being a mere label. It mutates into an archetype. It transforms from a historical footnote into a massive cultural symbol.
The artifact we're studying today proves that sometimes the less information present, the more powerful the remaining words actually become. By stripping away the history, the source material isolates the psychological impact of the name itself, proving that words can possess this immense weight, acting as anchors for our collective fears and fascinations.
Which naturally leads us to an inevitable, burning question. Where is the rest of the story? By focusing entirely on what is unsaid in our two-word source text, we're basically forced to stare at the blank space around these words and wonder what on earth lies beyond that terrifying name. The artifact absolutely refuses to tell you the narrative. It demands that you bring the story to it. It acts like a mirror, reflecting your own knowledge, dread, or curiosity right back at you. And the true brilliance of analyzing such a minimal piece of text is recognizing that the words themselves are just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the story isn't missing because someone made a typo. Its omission is the exact thing that gives the artifact its endless intrigue. The mystery isn't just in the words. It's living in that vast, unwritten white space surrounding them.
To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Sometimes, a name is the absolute only artifact left behind. We've spent our time today exploring how a mere two words can somehow encompass celestial mythology, brutal mortality, and the profound haunting power of negative space. We've seen how stripping away history doesn't erase meaning at all. Actually, it concentrates it into this dense, inescapable focal point. Our source material was brief, sure, but its implications are vast. It challenges us to think about how we consume information and how we react when the data dries up and we're left staring at the bare bones of language. It forces us to ponder the haunting power of an isolated phrase. So, as you walk away from this explainer, ask yourself, when all the facts eventually fade into history, what is the lasting power of the names we leave behind?